A star witness in the January 6 hearings is out with new allegations about the day the Capitol was attacked, but this time it's personal. In a new book, Cassidy Hutchinson alleges Trump advisor and former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani groped her while backstage during Trump's speech on the Ellipse. In an excerpt published in The Guardian, she wrote, "Rudy wraps one arm around my body, closing the space that was separating us." She then elaborates. NBC confirmed that the excerpt is indeed in the book. Rudy Giuliani, though, responded to the allegations yesterday.
I'm going to sue her for sure. We already have the papers done. I'm not going to give away our case, but we got some pretty good, solid evidence that it did not happen. And it has an inherently inconceivable thing to it, like in the middle of a crowd in a tent.
Joining me now, Hannah Moldavan, former spokesperson for the January 6th committee and senior communications advisor for the Congressional Integrity Project. Hannah, welcome. Cassidy Hutchinson described Giuliani as a wolf closing in on his prey. Would these groping allegations have been within the purview of the January 6th investigation? Had you heard about this before the account was published?
Alex, these allegations are disgusting and disappointing to hear. I'm no attorney, so in terms of the purview of what we were looking at, I don't want to get ahead of myself. But I think thinking about this in the larger context of what Cassidy Hutchinson has gone through is really important. There's a reason she was a star witness for us. It's because she was a young woman who was in the room with Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and others, and heard and saw a lot. And when other people, older men, pled the fifth or didn't comply with subpoenas for the select committee, she came forward and not only spoke to us, but spoke to us in front of 13 million people on national television, telling us things about Donald Trump's plot to overturn the election that we would not have known before. So thinking about how much she went through, these allegations happening, a job she had in the White House is disappointing. But I think we'll all be interested to read her book and hear more about her experience, both during the time she testified, her time in the White House, and her time after that. I
got to tell you, I 100% agree. That woman and the courage that she showed doing exactly what you described, compared that with those men mostly who turned tail and just ran away from telling the truth. It is extraordinary. We know in an interview that Cassidy did after her testimony to the 1-6 committee that her attorneys told her it's not safe for you to go home, and that she had to leave Washington, D.C. for a few months, in fact. Are you concerned that she may face backlash again following these new allegations? Are other January 6 witnesses facing similar safety concerns?
The Select Committee was very aware and concerned ourselves about everybody who came to testify before our hearings, especially because of the person who they were making allegations against, Donald Trump, the former president, right? We saw in our hearings individuals come forward, Ruby Freeman, Shay Moss, who had the ire of the president of the United States and people like Rudy Giuliani against them, and how that really changed and harmed their lives. We were really concerned about Cassidy because of the damning testimony that she brought forward. And so even more, I was with her on that day. Some of those photos you show, I'm behind her. We took her security on that day very seriously. And afterwards as well, we knew that she would have scrutiny on her. I will say what I am most proud of for her is that she and the Select Committee stood by her testimony, even when folks were questioning it because she was a young woman. She stood by her testimony. She told the truth, and it really changed the course of our investigation and brought to light facts that we didn't know before she testified.
Hannah, I want to ask you something I've wondered about. You said that you were with her during her testimony or leading up to the testimony. And when I thought about all that she was prepared to say and eventually did say, I wondered, were her knees weak going in? What was her demeanor? What was she like as she knew what she faced? To your point, 13 million Americans watching and hanging on her every word, like it or not.
Cassidy is smart. She knew what she was doing and the gravity of it. I was really impressed with how she came off and how she spoke in her poise. Before that, she, like anyone else her age, and I am around her age, that's why I was there with her before and during the testimony, was nervous. Every word she said had to be right, and she had to make sure that she stood by that. And I think when we watched her testimony, she did so well. She stood by her testimony that entire time, and she did really well, but she was very nervous, like any of us would be, especially when I mentioned how many people were watching.
Yeah. Well, she definitely took a deep breath and spoke her piece, what she recalled. Let me ask you about the testimony to the 1-6 committee in which she said that Donald Trump was so determined to go to the Capitol that day that he grabbed a Secret Service agent inside the president's limo. Donald Trump, as you know, responded to those claims on Meet the Press last Sunday. Take a look.
The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel.
I didn't have a dispute with them. You know, you had that one person said, I grabbed the man around the neck. Actually, I wish I was so strong to be able to do that. These are all tough guys, smart guys.
To dispute that account.
Dispute it? Who wouldn't dispute it? She's the craziest account I've ever heard.
We should note that Cassidy was very clear about the fact that it was not a direct something that she witnessed, that it was a second-person account. She was told what happened. But essentially, as you know, the committee's report was inconclusive about what exactly did happen inside the vehicle. Does that legally give Donald Trump free rein to dispute Hutchinson's claims?
Cassidy told her story, which, as you mentioned, Alex, it was a story she heard, so it was a second account story. And what I'll say is that the Select Committee talked to as many people as we could about this incident, and we stand by her testimony and what she said. You know, we believe her, and we presented that information. Donald Trump lied about winning the 2020 election. I don't know if his word is something that we should trust or believe. And I think as these 4 different indictments that are happening all now against Donald Trump come to light and we learn more information about that, I think it's up to the American people and the justice system to figure out if they believe what he is saying. You know, the big lie that he won the 2020 election was started by him. The January 6th committee found that he was the center of this multi-pronged plan to overturn the election, and his word is not one that has been truthful at all times.
ABC News sources say that another January 6 witness, Trump's former executive assistant Molly Michael, told investigators in the Mar-a-Lago case, Hannah, that Trump told her, quote, "You don't know anything about the boxes," when he found out the FBI wanted to talk to her about the case. NBC News has not independently verified that reporting. But when Molly Michael testified to the January 6 committee, she claimed to not recall much. If this signals she may be talking, what further information might she provide in the many cases against Donald Trump?
Molly Michael has a lot of information. The documents that she turned over to the Select Committee alone were really helpful because she was Donald Trump's assistant. So a lot of times people would email her to give things to Donald Trump, or she would email things to individuals on behalf of from POTUS, is what it said there. When it comes to the January 6th case to overturn the election, she talked to congressmen. Mo Brooks, for example, emailed her about requesting presidential pardons, right? So she had that information. She talked to people like the DOJ. She sent them information perpetuating some of the election fraud that Donald Trump wanted the attorney general to have, for example. So I think even if Molly Michael is tight-lipped, which she was to us, like you said, she said she didn't recall much about what happened on January 6th. Her emails and the information that she was privy to through some of that written correspondence could be really consequential in some of these cases.